weekly live show with, well, our trusted captain, Captain Ron, as you notice, is still absent. And yeah, well, he's doing well. He's healing. But the process, he had a surgical procedure today that went really well. It looks like that his body is taking to the treatments, and fingers crossed next week he'll be here, and then he can update you himself. But he does want everyone who is watching to know that you can't get rid of him that easily. So he will continue to help you with your anxiety and overcoming fear of flying. So with that, Captain Eric and Diane, you guys, Captain Eric and Flight Attendant Diane, you're actually an active Flight Attendant, Diane, which is so, I know, every time I say that, it's like, this is so freaking cool. And you're the only one who gets around these days.
I guess so, yeah.
Eric, do you get out much?
No, no, she's our only connection to the real operating world now.
With a paycheck, yes.
Yeah, Captain Eric was both a beneficiary and a victim of the pandemic early on. And so he is now full-time voluntarily with us. And we get the benefit, you get the benefit. And I just want to jump in straight into our Facebook group, and I'm going to bring up our screen here. All right, perfect. So I don't, if you're new to this show really is part of our Facebook group and then our free membership here at Fearless Flight, and that is our Birds of a Feather Facebook group. And we had a great story. Kelly Green, I just want to give you a shout out if you're watching that. Kelly is a graduate from the 201 Clit for Takeoff online masterclass, and she's a Phoenix resident, and she flew recently to New York, and she definitely, said that some anxiety was coming up pretty good for her. And she used the tools that she learned and the strategies that have worked before. And lo and behold, she had a marvelous flight, and there's some great pictures in there. And it's just, and I also want to honor Cheryl, because Cheryl mentioned that for her, flying right now, without the vaccine isn't really what, is current for her. And so this is a perfect leading to our poll question. When a vaccine is widely available, do you still intend or would you like to travel in 2021? So the assumption here is that a vaccine is widely available, and if that is not the case, well, if that's not the case, do you consider traveling or not? So just put it in the chat. Would you travel in 2021 if there was a vaccine in distribution? And if you haven't filled out our poll, just do that, please, as well. It just takes about 30 seconds. And I'm going to just now hand it over to you guys. I'm going to hand it over to Flight Attendant Diane and Captain Eric. What are we talking about today, Diane?
Well, we're kind of following up what we were touching on last week, which was the first part of your flight when you're going to be flying, whenever that is. We hope it's soon. You've gotten your ticket, you've gotten to the airport, you have getting ready, you've gone down the jet bridge, and you've boarded the airplane. And so we have greeted you, the forward flight attendant, and maybe we've handed you an antiseptic wipe, and we've gotten everybody on board. So I think this is about where we were last week. So we've gotten all of our passengers on board. We have done the important thing, which is bins and bags. The bins have to be closed. All the bags need to be stowed. And we have done our sweep, which means we've walked up and down the aisle, make sure everybody is compliant and they've got their seatbelt buckled and so on. And we have the boarding door closed. And so the boarding door is closed. We've gone to the flight deck. with our airline, and we've looked at Eric and his first officer, and we have said we're all set and we're good to taxi. And then they give
All
us
right.
thumbs up. We close the flight deck door, and then Captain Eric.
Pushback and start and taxi.
So I'm going to go through the first part of this a little bit, this pushback part, because we did touch on that last week. But if there's any questions, shoot them into Dieter. As Diane says, the door's shut, the jetway's pulled, the airplane's under its own power, and now we have a ground crew out front, and we're in direct communications with them, particularly the...
I hear a lot of noise back there.
Me too, and I don't know where it's coming from.
I'm gonna just, okay. I'm gonna just ask to unmute yourself again when you've got that source. Do you still hear anything, Diane?
I do. Oh, no, I don't.
Okay,
No, I do, but it's quieter.
okay.
Do you hear it, Eric?
Eric, you good to
Yeah,
go?
I hear us talking through my speakers, but something else was coming through there, and I have no idea what.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
So,
sorry.
so you ran into something that's a great lead-in because we're talking about cockpit management here, right? What you guys are doing, and you're gonna run us through. Just let me know. Do you want that checklist up, or do you just want to kind of like get started? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, how about now?
Yeah.
All right, if there's any more noise from back here, I'll just talk and hope that it sounds normal, and I'll mute it.
Okay.
So we're pushing back. The airplane's moving. We've done all of our pre-flight preparation while we were sitting there. We were very busy, but now we're a little bit relaxed for a minute. We're talking to the guy driving the tug, and we have signalmen out to the side. But the tug guy has us. We're in his complete control, which is good because they can see behind us and we can't. The only worrisome issues there is we always kind of seat of our pants want to feel that the tug tow bar is still hooked up to the airplane. It's possible to break those tow bars on the nose gear. And that happened to me many times in my career, and you hear a horrible loud crunch. And then the airplane, he stops the airplane and says, "Hey, Captain," and you go, "Yes, I just broke the tow bar." And you say, "Good. Did you break anything on the nose gear?" And they say, "No." And say, "Okay, we'll wait here." And they say, "Okay." And they go get a new tow bar. But another bad situation, which happened to some of my friends and not me, is if you feel the airplane suddenly very smoothly rolling and out front you see a signalman and a tug and a bar and a tow driver with little round O's in their mouth, like that, you came disconnected from the tow bar and the airplane is now rolling backwards freely, which is not a good situation. So you try and stop as gently as possible. But assuming
So how much of that, I just gotta jump in, how much of that would actually be noticeable in the back? Any of it?
they would
Some of it?
they would not notice the tug coming disconnected, the bar coming disconnected. But if they snap the tow bar, it's a loud crunch. And everybody will look around at each other like they're not nervous.
And then
Did
they'll
anybody hear
stare
that?
at
Yeah.
us. Yeah,
The
then they'll-
whole airplane is going to hear it. But assuming none of that happens, we're going to push back and set the brakes, and they're going to disconnect everything and the headset, and we'll have a signalman that will signal us when everybody's clear so we know when we're okay to go forward, and we'll count the number of guys, the tug and the tow bar out of the way and perform. We've either performed an engine start on the push or right there, and now we're ready to go forward. But I'll stop now and go to Diane because she's doing a lot of stuff.
We're doing a bunch of stuff. And one of the important things I want to say is when we have given the thumbs up and the captain has given the thumbs up to the forward flight attendant and we close that flight deck door, we enter something called sterile flight deck, which means that the flight attendants, we're doing our thing. We're giving safety demonstrations for the seat belts and so on. We're giving a long set of announcements as far as oxygen masks and all of those kinds of things. We're walking up and down the aisle again to make sure everyone's compliant. But the thing that the passengers need to understand is is that once that flight deck door is shut and we enter sterile flight deck, we as flight attendants don't call the pilots, we don't call the flight deck unless there's a gigantic emergency, because we know that those guys and gals up front are very busy doing what they're doing. And so we are busy with what we're doing, but we're not interfering with them. And as Eric said earlier, that if they in the flight deck hear a flight attendant calling them during this particular time, it's not going to be good. It's always an emergency in that kind of situation. So we're busy doing our thing, and we get it all done. We do our final sweep. We sit in our jump seats, buckle up, put our harnesses on, and then we're good to go.
And what's happening there with you guys up front, Eric?
So I said that when Diane talked about that, I said, yes, if they call us and we're taxiing, our first response is usually, oh, S-bomb, because we know that somebody's standing up, or they're on the wrong plane, they want to go back to the gate, or we have a medical emergency, whatever it is, it's all bad, or they would have called us.
Yeah.
But throw up that slide of the checklist, Dieter. Either one of those, can you do that?
Yeah, I have that. I have that right here.
So we're accomplishing items from memory that we call flows. And we've gone over this in some of our podcasts on how we set the airplane up for takeoff. And we're doing this from memory. We have various phases that are shown on the checklist here. We do these things from memory. And when we're done doing it from memory, one crew member picks up the checklist and reads the big important items to the other crew member, who responds to them. And the person reading the checklist makes sure that things have been done correctly. So we set it up from memory, and then both pilots are involved in confirming that we did those things right. In other words, while we're taxiing along, that will be the before takeoff checklist. And we're doing that checklist there, and there's some big, super important items there, like stabilizer trim, flaps, and auto brakes that need to be set correctly for the airplane to fly. So we're doing those things and confirming it with the other pilot, and that's what we're doing while we're rolling along. We're also looking out front, as we were talking about earlier. I used to think taxiing would not be a problem. I'm going to turn the volume down again because I can still hear that, and I don't know why. I always thought taxiing would be relaxing, but it is very much not relaxing. And you have to pay attention to where you're going. The other guy helps you pay attention to where you're going. If you even think about making a wrong turn, the tower will call and scream at you because they go, I know you haven't turned the wrong way yet, but I know you're thinking about it. So you're really paying attention, navigating very carefully where you're going. And the whole time, there's catering trucks, line guys driving back and forth with bags on bag carts connecting to other airplanes, and gas trucks and every other kind of vehicle whipping back and forth all over the place in front of you. So it's really kind of unnerving until you get out onto the taxiway where there's no more vehicles, because it is like being in a mall parking lot. But once you're out there,
the very design of the airplane isn't really conducive to land operations, right?
No.
It's really designed to be in the air.
Yeah.
And so I always, do you guys remember that truck that kind of started to spin out in Chicago a while back? So that's kind of like or when planes accidentally nip each other. So in general, that happens so rarely that it's actually newsworthy when it occurs. And to my knowledge, it's been a while since any of that. I've been aware, and we're having all sorts of search queries going all the time, so we get the news. But let me check in here quickly with if there's any questions with anybody who's watching. So,
and then we should cut to Diane, because you're doing stuff, right, Diane?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're doing a thing or two,
So while we're so there's no direct questions to the topic. So Diane, what's going on for you? You're just relaxing and getting
we're just
champagne going.
There, right, doing crossword puzzles. We're not paying attention. No, we're one thing when the passengers have boarded, we're checking everybody. We literally are looking at all the passengers to making sure that no one's ill, maybe no one's intoxicated, all those other kinds of things. And then once we've gotten through all of our announcements and sweeps and making sure that the cabin is secure, because that's one of the things that's going to happen is the captain is going to call back before we take off. And he's going to say, yada, 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 make sure the cabin is secure, and then call to the flight attendant forward who's going to take the interphone and say cabin secure. And so that at that point, the pilots know that we have everything under control, because they don't have any, I mean, once that flight deck door is closed, they're trusting that we're doing our job. We're trusting that they're doing their job. And they have no idea what's going on back there. So they have to confer and confirm with us that all of our passengers are safe and that we're safe, that we are in our jump seats. And so we're doing that. And when we're taxiing out and when we start rolling down the runway, we're going through reviewing things. So we're basically worst case scenario, that particular moment in time. What will we do? What are the emergency commands we're going to give? And we do that every single time we take off and every single time just before we land. So we are rehearsing all the time.
Yeah, and that is so important, because that rehearsal is where, if it's deliberate and mindful and actually, focused on accomplishing, some kind of positive outcome in a situation that isn't preferable, right?
Exactly.
If you do that often enough, the fear dissipates, and what happens is you gain confidence, because your body, your mind, your brain is taking all of that in. So it's somatic at some point. You just know it. You don't know how to know it.
It's praxis.
But you do need to be staying conscious, right? That's the important part, because that's why, for example, Kelly, who posted in our Facebook group, it's like Captain Ron always says, it's like an allergy. As long as you're not exposed to the allergen, right? You're fine. But once the allergen comes into your sphere, and for her it was an opportunity to go across the country to New York City.
New York, right?
So now all of a sudden everything comes back. It didn't come back as strong, and she wasn't quite as overwhelmed, because she already knew from the past what she could fall back on. Sure. So that's kind of like why we're encouraging you to keep coming back, because that's currency. That's your kind of like chips that you can put in when you have to go on a flight. All right.
The more you do it, the more comfortable you feel. So yeah.
So we're taxiing along, and Diane's doing stuff, and the reason she's grinding on you about those seat belts while we're taxiing, even though it's slow, is because I just mentioned the mad show going on out in front of the airplane. And if one of those vehicles decides they're going to shortcut in front of us, or drops a bag off a tug right in front of the airplane or something like that, we're going to stop, and the brakes are made to haul the airplane down from 160 miles per hour at a very heavy weight. And we're only going 10 miles per hour. And if we see that, we're going to be startled, and the stop will probably not be smooth. It will probably be fairly violent, and it would be nice if it's smooth, but since we're startled, it'll probably be swift, and hopefully you are buckled to the seat so you'll remain there while we then come on the PA and make an excuse why we had that wicked jolt. But after all that stuff happens, we go down to the runway and we're ready to take off. And I don't know if Diane wants to talk some more, but we're ready to go. And I won't talk anymore about that, because we're going to talk about after we've landed and reverse the process in.
And that's going to be another segment in a future show. So let's come to amazing Erin. Hi, Erin. Happy New Year's. By the way, Happy New Year's to all of you. I kind of totally forgot that, this is actually our first episode of season 4.
Hey,
And-
Dieter,
yeah.
if we get a chance, because we taxied out, I
Yeah.
would like to taxi in and park because that won't stand alone. So
You mean like, but then
after we've landed,
oh, you want to complete that cycle, but
Yeah.
not do the takeoff.
Fun. Yeah.
yeah, I want to go park because I want to go home.
But you're still waiting for your takeoff. So hold on. Let me
Oh,
just throw this in, because this is kind of like why it's so important that people listen to what you guys have to share. And that is, Aaron said one time when I flew, a pilot wrote a note saying everything was good, and he called the flight attendant to come get the note and bring it to Aaron. And she, to this day, still has this note. So, these are the kind of things that, not every pilot will write you a note, but we do encourage you, especially after something happened during the flight, go check in with the flight attendants and with the pilots afterwards, just to kind of bring yourself back into a space where you don't have to keep that loop open, because open loops just keep going. All right, so let's jump into, we took off, we got to our, well, we're not quite at our destination. We're
basically almost
landed.
Landed.
Everybody except the flight attendants,
So there's one thing I want to say just before we're going to get to our short segment on landing, and that is because Eric was talking about the vehicles. I mean, and that's true. I mean, there's you think it was Grand Central Station, literally. There are vehicles everywhere, and we were landing, and this has been a long time ago. We were landing and we were just getting ready to land, and we powered back up and we did a go around because there was a vehicle at the end of the runway. I mean, this is the kind of thing that can happen that Eric and the pilots are so well trained for. We were getting ready to land. There was a vehicle at the end of the runway, and the story was that the individual's radio had died. The tower was trying to get in touch with him to let him know that a plane was coming in. The radio was dead. He couldn't, and we couldn't land, even though by the time we got to the end of the runway, the truck would have been off the end of the runway. And so that's another reason why we're saying keep those seatbelts on. So anyway, so we have landed successfully. Take it, Eric.
So we've landed, and now you're all relieved because the turbulence is over, and no big monster with tentacles grabbed the airplane or anything horrible like you guys like to dream up. So you're all relaxed, and now we're nervous again because we have to taxi, and the same lunatics are driving around the ramp and the ramp area where we're going to park the airplane. As I explained to those guys earlier, it's like being in a mall parking lot on Black Friday, and you have a battleship and everybody else has a Porsche. It's a little terrifying. But we're going to do some items in our head that I mentioned, the flows. We're going to retract the flaps. We're going to turn off the auto brakes, anti-ice, windshield heats, that kind of things that we don't need. We're getting ready to park the airplane, so we're doing some of that stuff. And we're usually going to shut down an engine because we don't need all that power to taxi. And in the back, you'll see a flash as the electrical system transfers from that engine being shut down to the little APU in the back. But we're gonna come off the taxiway, and then we're gonna approach the gate area and enter it, and that's where the vehicle traffic is craziest. But we're gonna get an assignment and turn on what's called the J line, because there's a hook at the end kind of showing you where to turn. So it's called the J line. We're gonna start lining up and approaching the gate, and we'll have two guys will be at each wing signal that we're watching with our peripheral vision to make sure that everything's clear there, and they'll show us when we need to stop. And then there'll be a guy in the front marshaling us forward and getting ready to tell us when to stop. And if there's anything in the way, any problems, something happened, he'll give us a stop signal and we'll stop. Or we'll turn onto the line. There'll still be the two guys on the wing, and there's an automatic digital video game up there called SafeDock. And SafeDock has cameras that see the airplane. The first thing they do, you read the top of the airplane to make sure it has your airplane identified right, so it knows what the right size is. And the SafeDock will have a little digital guy going like this, and then if you got to go one way, it'll go like this, and you got to one, he'll go like that, and he'll have more arrows to tell you whether to do a little bit or a lot. And then when you come up the stop line, it'll go like a 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, so you can try and feather in the stop. But it's so hard to stop when that happens, because the little digital guy just goes like that instead of slowly having his arms come together like a real marshaller, and it's really hard to resist not sticking the brakes when he goes like that. He doesn't feather you in at all. And
So I have a question.
so then you
I have a question for you guys. Because we're kind of like there was one other comment where in a group, and that is, so if that's what you're saying, is it's the most dangerous part of the journey.
it's not the most. That's not true.
That's not
true. But it's the most terrifying for me.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The sense that you have to actually pay way more attention in those two stages, right? Getting to the takeoff and coming from the landing to the gate. Those are actually the two stages where you're the most vulnerable as a pilot and as an airplane, because there's so much other stuff going on.
On the ground.
Yeah, of course. Then
But not the critical phase of flight. So when we're getting ready to land, the pilots, the captain will give us another signal, and it will be entering sterile flight deck again, which means from that moment forward until we get to the gate and the captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, that's the second time where we don't call the flight deck unless there's a huge emergency, for the same reason, because those are the two critical phases of flight for them in the air. What you're talking about, the taxi in and out, those are scary as far, or critical with regard to, I always put things in analogies of cars. It's like the on-ramp and the off-ramp. Those are very critical. So it's critical as far as whether or not, Eric, you're going to have to slam on the brakes, or someone's going to accidentally run into your wing and whack something. But it's not a critical phase of flight as far as the actual.
Well stated. Exactly right.
So we look at a critical phase of flight as the first few minutes going down the runway and takeoff, and then the same thing the last few minutes and landing and coming to an appropriate halt. And so those are the two most critical. That's why we are paranoid about making sure everybody's in a seatbelt, because as we won't, like I just described, I mean, we were almost touching the ground and the pilots had to power back up. And so if someone had decided, well, we're almost on the ground, I'm going to take my seatbelt off. Well, no. And so as Eric was saying, when we've landed and these guys are driving the plane to the gate, to their parking spot, I have, even in my short, not quite 2 years, experienced all of a sudden coming to a screeching halt because there's somebody or FOD or an object blown around, and we've had to stop very quickly. And if the people don't have their seatbelt on, they don't understand how even going 10 miles an hour and coming to a screeching halt can affect them in their seat, and they can become injured. And so we are not kidding. We keep our seatbelts on until that seatbelt sign is off. And the rule is, if we're in our seats with our seatbelts buckled, everybody else needs to be in their seats with their seatbelt buckled. Trust me, we're not doing this just to look cute in our harnesses. So.
All right, awesome. I just have a comment here, and Eric, you can kind of decode that. Taxi via whiskey 2 Bravo to the gate. I hear that all the time on the PSP ATC. That's Jim Duke. I love that. Thanks, Jim. That was so. I'll let you comment on that one, Eric.
So what's happening is the tower is controlling the flow of everybody, since we can't back up, and they're controlling the flow of the outbounds and the inbounds so that they don't mess each other up, and everybody can stay moving along. If you get a situation where there's nose to nose or something like that, I mean, it's just a nightmare. Mm-hmm. So the tower is giving you those alphanumerics are abbreviations for taxiways that are always letters or combinations of letters. He's telling you which taxiways after you exit the runway, which taxiways he wants you to take to the gate entrance point. So while the thrust reversers are going really loudly and you're on the brakes and getting ready to turn off, the tower will occasionally get overexcited while you're doing all that. You're going, what did he say? He's telling, and the first officer is if it's a good first officer, is paying close attention. So at least you can have the initial part of the route right and start up that route past the gate, because he's going to tell you how he wants you to go park. That's what's happening there.
And yesterday, for example, my flight, I did a short flight yesterday. We landed about 25 minutes early, and I know passengers think that's a really good deal, but the good news and the bad news is when you land that early, there was no parking place for us. I mean, literally, you have to put it in those kinds of terms. The gate is a parking spot, and there was somebody there. Not only was there somebody there, but there were 2 other planes trying to leave the parking lot. And so they're in the alleyway. So we're just sitting there. So even though we landed 25 minutes early, we still got to the gate right on time. And so when we're doing that, and then from our perspective, trust me, there has never been in the history of the planet that a passenger's gotten to the gate before the plane has. So sit down, keep your seatbelt buckled, because when we open the main cabin door, no one's going anywhere because the jet bridge isn't even attached. You could just kind of sit there, chill out a little bit, because trust me, I don't want anyone falling into the abyss because they've gotten so excited. Oh God, they're going to get off the plane, but the jet bridge isn't there. So really just sit down and be cool. Just talk to your friends and text.
Just talk to your friends.
Yeah, just get your phone out and go. Anyway.
All right, let's end this with something I'm gonna say maybe not funny for anybody who is not connected to FearlessFlight, because anybody who is not connected to FearlessFlight, something's coming, and I am gonna just pull up a slide here. It's just basically what's coming is that emotional support animals will become a thing of the past.
Right.
And basically that's what's happening currently, because Diane, you told me that Alaska Airlines was the first airline to actually, as a company policy, ban all emotional support.
The use of that, yeah, exactly. And that it comes on the heel of the federal government changing the regulation in that regard. So Alaska is the first airline. American just announced today that they are going to cease having that category of emotional support animals. So any animal that comes into the cabin will either be a well-trained and documented service animal or a cabin pet. The use of the emotional support animal as opposed to a cabin pet was really abused.
So they basically tightened up the definitions of the gray areas based on human beings' decisions and choices and actions, as it happens so many times. And the reason why I say for anybody that doesn't have support, doesn't have a strategy, doesn't have tools to maneuver without that emotional support animal, right? It's a crutch. It's a cute crutch. It's a nice crutch. It's a cuddly crutch. It's a soft crutch. It's very comforting. And at the same time, it's, the question is not so much about whether or not you love your animal. The question is whether or not you can learn to manage your own anxiety and your own mind. Right. Exactly. And then it's okay, because if you do want to fly with your animal, it's a passenger. Why would that be any different? But if it's a service animal, but then you have a bona fide,
yes, has to be documented.
Has to be documented. There's no
gray area. And it's a dog. The definition is much more narrow now. A service animal is a dog that is trained specifically for a particular assistance to a passenger, retrieving something or whatever. Yeah.
Eric.
And well, we didn't, I think it was a couple of years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, we finally decided emotional support animals could only be a dog or a cat. But before that, it was like, okay, what are they going to show up now with? A Cape Buffalo, a Russian boar, or a cobra, or like all three? Really? Yeah, we had to restrict it. We had to dumb it down to cats and dogs before it was eliminated because it was abused so badly.
And now
Peacocks, everything.
peacock, yes.
So
And
cats are out. So
Cats
cats are out. Okay, gotcha. I'm gonna tell you right now. It's gonna be gone quickly and swiftly for a number of reasons, including hygiene and including that kind of stuff. And Jim says I could take my parrot.
he'll have to pay at least $125 and put it in a cage.
But will he get? Well, nobody gets pretzels anymore. So, oh well. Pretzels is a thing of the past too.
Not for a while, not till the COVID problem is over with.
Well, I just want to, on that happy note, I want to end there, and I want to say special thank you to you guys for stepping up here together, and Captain Ron will be back. I'm super excited. I think he's itching literally to get back. And we're excited. I believe, fingers crossed, it's going to be next week. And if all things go well, then we're going to, not just talk about when we're going to be flying again. There's a lot of things going on in aviation. So it's a great industry because there's so much innovation, so much efficiency, creativity, and it's really cool. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Organized. Thank you.
See you guys in a week, and hopefully it'll be smaller pictures with one more person in it.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. All right.